told us in their land use planning is that they do not want any high-density development within the county, that they want those developments to be within a municipality and not within the county at large. Right. So when you say they're on board, what have they said to you?
What I'm referring to is I'm referring to our meetings. We've had pre-meetings with the county. And what they've said to us is they've said that this is something that they are all okay with, and it is something that they would like to see move forward because it benefits Casper proper, and that it's something that for the time being they would allow, because for them they would add houses into their tax base, and then at a later date, although they would lose them, they're okay kind of floating it for now, having a subdivision that at some point would be part of the city of Casper.
And you're aware that you're asking us to make an exception to a long-standing policy.
Right. But what I'm more asking is that maybe we look at it and see if there's some ways that we can help kind of provide this service, because in the city of Casper, it's something people need. And so what I'm more asking is I'm asking whether or not there's a possibility that we could look at this and maybe either amend it or make an exception for something that benefits the people of Casper.
And you say that this might lead to annexation at some point. Typically, the incentive for annexation is the very thing you're asking us for, access to our utilities. What incentive would you have to move forward with annexation if you already had that in place?
Right, that's a very good question. Thank you. Well, for us as builders, it's something. I mean, what we do is we provide entry-level housing, right? And we provide good entry-level housing. We start with granite, hardwood. It comes with upgrades. And what we're trying to do is we're more trying to provide a service to Casper, the city that we live in. Not necessarily, make a quick buck and leave. We live here. We're Casper residents. And so from our end, what we see it as is it would have to be an agreement. It would be something that we would have a formal agreement to actually annex in, to start the annexation process within 36 months, so that you were guaranteed at some point that it would be annexed in. But I see that we are kind of doing it backwards, but it's out of necessity more than trying to get these services and then leave it. So it is something that we would agree to do.
So I understand that with the 0% down, but are there not some other programs out there such as WCDA, that people, if you had already annexed into the city, that there are other financing packages out there while they're not 0% down? I don't typically believe in that. I think you got to have a little skin in the game. So, WCDA has got low interest rates, and even the general mortgage market right now is very low. So what is the difference in affordability for someone other than the 0 down? Mm-hmm. What is the difference in the affordability to buy the house? The interest rate is floated based on income. Explain a little bit about the rural development part so I can kind of decipher that versus what the regular housing is. Definitely.
That's a good question. Thank you. So typically WCDA is actually 3% down. So what we're kind of looking at in our price range is we're looking at something to the effect of $6,000 to maybe $10,000. Mm-hmm. Okay, and for a lot of people, so that's one aspect. One aspect is that people now, there are people who can afford to pay a mortgage, who can afford to put money down, but who typically aren't incentivized to move out of an apartment or to actually take on that investment because it is so much money. So actually the money down is a huge decentivizer for people to take on that responsibility, because for them it looks like they're paying money out of pocket, right? It looks like they have to pay $6,000 for something that is more of a nightmare. So the reality is it's kind of drawing people out of the apartments, and it's drawing people into a market that for them they wouldn't necessarily be attracted to before, but it allows them to become homeowners because it's something that, it's something that most people need to experience, maybe. So that's one aspect. The second is so interest rates right now they are fairly low, but they're looking to rise, and we're watching them increase steadily. And as they increase, it's going to be a little bit harder to offer financing to someone who has to put so much down on a house and then come in with fairly high, if not higher, payments than they would have to have now. So the incentivization of the rural development is that it allows people who wouldn't necessarily be able to afford home ownership, right, in a conventional loan or in a WCDA loan. It allows them to come out of the apartments and allows them to actually get into an entry-level house. And what we find that there aren't significantly higher foreclosure rates in rural development housing. So what we're not looking at is we're not looking at giving people houses they can't afford, but the 0% down allows them to take over home ownership and then just kind of pay it off in a more extended period. Without kind of giving away something, without kind of giving away, as you said,
They end up paying
the ability to get into it without any skin in the game.
So they're always they're gonna pay no matter what. I mean, whether.
Hopefully, right, sure. I mean, there's no guarantees, but right, yeah, it's not significantly different. So we're looking at kind of the same thing. There's just this barrier of the 3%, which is made up for, obviously, in time when people make their payments.
So on a $250,000 home, a person is looking at what kind of a mortgage, typically?
It depends. I mean, like you mentioned before, income plays a huge part. Credit plays a huge part as well, and the amount that you're able to put down plays a huge part. It's hard to say because it varies so much from person to person. In my experience, and this is speaking as not a mortgage broker and someone who just, develops the houses, generally I think most people look at between a $1,200 and $1,500 payment maybe. It's significantly less than what you would pay to rent the same amount. So it kind of gives people, the same thing, but with more of an ability to float it for a while.
Follow-up, Mr. Mayor? One more follow-up.
Yes, ma'am.
Thing is, when you're doing new construction, are you going to, as a part of the housing deal, are you going to put in front yards so that there's at least grass in the front? Some landscaping so that when you drive in, because if you can't afford a down payment, you certainly then can't afford the additional $10,000 to $15,000 that you're going to need for landscaping and fencing.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, how do you balance that?
We do. That's all in the house price. And like I said before, we build entry-level housing, but it's by no means cheap. I mean, we put granite and hardwood, and it does come with landscaping. So what we're providing is we are providing a house that is the complete package. I mean, with the exception of houses that have unfinished basements that someone could finish in the future, right, if they so wished. But we work that into the entire house price so that what they are getting is the complete package. And what it is a complete house. And
So granite instead of some nice Formica top? When, I guess I'm trying to figure out, when did granite suddenly become the requirement as opposed to Formica top?
It's by no means the requirement or even the standard maybe in a lot of places, but for us it's just what we chose to do. So.
But you could make the houses cheaper if you didn't do that.
Potentially. I mean, or, we could just make more money, but our hope is that we can provide these good amenities for people and still give entry-level housing. Yeah.
Mr. Gaddis?
Yeah, thank you.
Councilman Hopkins, I think, and then Councilman Cathy.
I guess I'm curious, Mr. Gaddis, you say that the county has agreed to this and encouraged it, but we're sitting here watching city tax dollars, and typically in Wyoming, 1% or sales taxes provide a great deal of our income. Mm-hmm. So this would be in the county until such time as date uncertain that it would come into the city. In the meantime, the county would be getting the sales tax on a proportionate basis. Have they agreed to provide the city with a proportionate amount of sales tax from their sales tax revenues?
That's not something that we have formally talked about with them, but it's something that we would definitely be willing to, as we move forward, discuss with them. One thing we have talked about is because there was mention in our pre-meetings with the city that some of the staff had concerns about the fact that there would be lost tax revenue in the time before we actually annexed into the city. And there are a couple ideas on the table that we would like to kind of look at as we're moving forward. That could definitely be one of them. But another one is that we would build on our HOA. We would build an HOA and then have an extra fee in there to make up for whatever lost revenue would be a part of the city. So it would actually be floated by the homeowners until it was annexed into the city.
But we have no ability to lien an HOA. We can't take that.
Sure. Right. And
among the homeowners.
Right. But that would be something that we would set up, and it would be an agreement that we would work through.
So it looks to me like, if I understand this correctly, the city has taken the risk that they will come into the city at some future date. But in the meantime, we're providing sewer and water and whatever protection they need. So it's kind of like, why buy the cow when you're getting the milk for nothing?
That's a fact.
Sure. Yeah, and like I mentioned before, that is something that we understand, we see is a real risk of the city. But at this point, what we're looking at is we're looking at the fact that we are providing all the sewer and water. We're putting in all the infrastructure, and we will have the homeowners, like they do, they will pay for their sewer, trash, and water, so that there isn't hopefully an accrued loss on the city side. But it is something that what we are talking about is we're talking about tax revenue in 3 years, if not sooner. Based off of our projections, and if you look at the bullet points I gave you, the total housing that we hope to have will be about 250 houses, with 85 houses completed by next summer. And with all of the research we've done, the realtors we've talked to, people in the mortgage industry, they're telling us that that is something that is it's very realistic to actually sell that out. And so if that is the case, we will agree to do it sooner. So our 36-month date is kind of that's the end of the line. Given the ability to annex sooner, we'll definitely start the process.
Mr. Mayor. Just did a Google quickly. $1,500 a month is considered affordable for someone who earns $60,000 in income a year, and that's about what our median income is in Casper. So you're going to, if you have a $250,000 house, they're not going to be able to afford. Someone who earns 100% of median income is not going to be able to afford your housing. They actually are going to have to be 130 to 150%.
Right. Well,
So how does that, I guess I'm trying to figure out how that is, you use the term affordable housing, how does that become affordable?
Sure. What I'm not saying is I'm not saying affordable housing, and unfortunately at this point we don't provide low-income housing.
No.
So what I'm talking about is entry-level housing, and it's kind of different because it's what we are looking at is we are looking at kind of the upper middle end. Excuse me. And what that means is we're looking at people who could potentially afford the house payment, but can't actually get out of it because because their rent may be too high and they can't save the money, or maybe they just don't have $10,000 to put down on a house, but could afford it. To speak to the 250 is kind of the higher end of our price range. What we tend to build around, and this is just, obviously we offer models from the 200 to 250, but we end up probably closer to the 220 range, between 200 and 220. So it's not necessarily affordable, but what we're talking about is entry level.
So have you looked around lately that there's a lot of white pickups sitting, this is a scary time.
Right.
This would be a scary time to do something like this.
Mm-hmm. And it would be, but like I mentioned before, we have a 4.05 absorption rate, which means that we're still in a seller's market. And generally, when the energy industry slows down, what we see in Casper, I've been in real estate. I've had my real estate license since 2010, and my experience is that what we've seen in Casper is we see right above the 300 price range kind of drops off, and for the most part, the 200, so the 175 to 250 price range generally stays consistent and generally stays fairly strong. So right now, it's actually still a strong market.
Yeah.
So, but you're right. No, it is a.
It could tank real quick. I'm just.
It could.
Okay.
Did you have a question, Councilman Keth?
Thank you, but actually, Councilman Hopkins brought up the point about getting the milk without buying the cow, and the potential to for the tax revenue, and actually we would be subsidizing those out-of-city homeowners because of our reduced water rates, and that's inappropriate to be subsidizing those people. Also, too, I guess, along the lines of what Councilman Mandel was saying, is our economy right now is in a very big state of flux, and you keep talking about 85 houses being sold by this time next year, build out in 3 years. The other concern then is if this doesn't happen, because those of us that have been in the oil and gas business for 30 plus years, this is looking a lot like the 1980s, which this is going to extend more than just a year or 2 years. And I'm not sure you're going to make that build out, and are you going to wind up then with 40 houses sitting out there in the county and going, what do I do now? Which now you have really left the city and those residents and the county hung out to dry with this whole plan. And I think that's part of why the county doesn't really want excess subdivisions, and why the city doesn't want to provide services to out-of-city parties. So those are some very big barriers that there needs to be an awful lot of work headed in some direction to make this come about. And I guess the other thing, you're talking $6,000 to $10,000 for a down payment. these homeowners better be able to have that kind of money to be able to maintain these properties on an annual basis. So I guess my suggestion to these people as well would be to sock that money away for a year and get your $6,000 to be able to make that down payment, because you've got to be able to learn how to build value, and giving people a home with, as was stated, no skin in the game. I've watched that in certain other communities, and basically the housing winds up destroyed. And that concerns me as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. And if I could just make a few quick points to respond to that. I think that's a very real concern. And it is a real concern of ours as well, because we're not jumping into this, feet first without having it examined the market. Because for us, it would be a disastrous thing to end up a year from now with 40 houses and, an economy that can't support that housing. A couple of things, though, to address your first point, which is a very good point about the subsidized water. If there are lower water prices that the city is subsidizing, that would be something we would also be willing to work into an HOA, so that we could kind of compensate what the city is having to spend in extra money for this water, which is something that we would actually like to, as we move forward, discuss, and we're very open to ideas and suggestions. At this point, our lawyers have said, go for it. If that's something that the city is willing to take, then that's something we can do. So that's to address the water concern. The other concerns, I think they're definitely real concerns, are addressed better by the fact that on the north side of Beverly, there are apartments going up right now. The apartment building hasn't actually slowed down in Casper at all. We've provided more of these apartments, and less of those people who could afford those payments, right? Less of those people are going to actually live in houses because, well, they're kind of stuck with apartments. And at the same time, what we don't see is we don't see a lot of people in Casper who, maybe they couldn't afford the 3% down, but they could afford the house payment. We see those people, they exist, but they're having to move to places like Evansville. They're having to move to places like Bar None, and they're having to move to places like Mills. And all of those places, the rural development subdivisions are built out. And those are the ones that are still, to this day, that they're still closing houses and they're still selling. So I think the point about having skin in the game is a very real point, one that I personally agree with. I think that there should be some investment. But on the large scale, what we can't say is, by saying you have to have skin, you have to have this money down, we are limiting a very real segment of the market. And at this point in Casper, I think we would be better off as a city to not limit them and to say, hey, if you want to live in Casper proper, that you can still do it. It's just at a later date. So I think those are definitely real concerns, and I think, living in an energy town, we see the flux more and more. But in reality, those people still exist and they're still buying houses. They're just not buying them in Casper.
Does the Wyoming Rural Development people apply for a loan uses a formula similar to a private lender as far as the percentage of income that they can use for their housing?
Absolutely. Right, yes. And that, of course, is determined by their total income per year and their credit rating. Yes.
And they verify all of those things?
They do, yes.
Questions, Councilman Schleifer?
Thank you. Just with your discussions with the county commissioners and rural development, do you have any documentation, or have they given you anything tangible that shows their commitment and what they're agreeing to?
We do. At this point, we have more verbal agreements than we do written agreements, but of course it's because it's kind of a unique thing. The county is looking at us saying, well, yeah, that sounds really good, but, what is it going to look like? And to be honest, we don't know, because this isn't something that's been done before. But it is something that if we can work together with the city, the county, and rural development, it's something that could be a very real possibility. So.
Okay. And just one follow-up. And Mr. City Attorney, I don't necessarily need an answer now, but I'm curious if this meets all of our legal. Is this legal?
Well, this is unique in that they have a large expanse of property that is contiguous with the city, but they want to develop, if you will, a southern portion of it and not have that considered to be contiguous. And I guess some of the questions we'd have to answer is, would they agree to no taps at all for the property that is contiguous, so they don't use our line for outside water at reduced prices and never bring it into the city? I think there's a lot of questions here that are hanging. I think the biggest issue is the city policy, though, when you're contiguous, that if you want water, you do an X. If you deviate from that policy, you end up with spotty development in the county and no way for the city to expand its border.
Put something in the agreement that they would annex within 36 months.
Well, it's required. In all of our annexation agreements of outside, to get outside water and sewer, you annex in.
Within a year,
Well,
Yes.
no, this offer from Mr. Gaddis is we will annex within 36 months.
Right, typically it's a shorter time frame than that.
Right. No one has ever approached us and said, we want to annex, but we need this amount of time
Either
before we can annex.
within a year or when you are contiguous. And so when the city boundaries grow out to you, because you know that we've done that along Wyoming Boulevard here of late. There was a party just within the last year that their septic system failed, and so they needed to get on city sewer. And they said, yes, whenever you're here, whenever the city limits reach us, we will annex in. We get it. We understand that you're providing this service to your citizens. And so as soon as we are contiguous, we'll annex in.
Maybe we should defer this for our discussion, but let's make sure we get
I
our
had a real
questions
quick,
answered.
right, a real quick clarifying point. The tract of land we're talking about is not actually contiguous with the city. There's county land. There are two separate tracts of land. One of them right now is, yes, ma'am. We're talking about yes, we're talking about the green one and the orange one. And the yellow, or the purple tract, yes, exactly, the purple tract right there is not actually contiguous. That's the one that would border with the city property.
Who owns the purple tract?
Sorry, excuse me.
Who owns that?
We own part of it. No, I'm sorry, yes. That purple tract we own.
Yes, so you can.
Man, this guy just
you are
ain't got the
contiguous to
answers,
the
do
city.
he?
No, but not with the tracts we're talking about.
No, but it's a sleight of hand. I mean, you are contiguous to the city. I mean, that's the very point that I'm making, is that the property that is owned by you is contiguous to the city, just as the parcel that we talked with the gentleman at 3 o'clock today is contiguous to the city. The piece that he wants to develop is a mile away from the city, and we're saying it's all common ownership. If you want water and sewer, you annex into the city. If you want water and sewer in your green parcel, you need to annex all of that into the city. Thanks, Robin. You're doing very well with that pen, and thank you.
It's fine. It's fine. Please go ahead. Can we get your name too, please?
I'm sorry, Chris Gaddis, 1011 Goodstein. I'm a member of Gaddis Customer. The reason we're doing this, and they are different tracks, is I know that FEMA, and I talked to Constance even before the meeting, I know FEMA doesn't care to start a Clomar. We got to reroute the drainage because the Sage Creek runs through here. I bought the original property, 31 acres, over a decade ago. We developed Heritage Hills. We had 28 lots. And the Clomar, which is the rerouting, took so long that I had those held up. Now, the FEMA doesn't care whether I'm in the city or the county. I know they don't care about it. I do, because I almost went bankrupt because I couldn't build on those lots until I was approved of the drainage, the rerouting, then we had to build it. And then after we got it done in 2010 and it was completely done, all we had to do was build Heritage 2 and to their model, and the city signed off on it, and we could build. Well, that was only supposed to take 30 to 60 days. We started that process last summer and just got it done this summer. So we sat around. We could have built on some of the houses. We sat around not being able to build on some of them. So the reason we're doing this is that tract, that the purple tract, that has that drainage. And we have to start the process all over again that we started with the first 31 acres. This allows us, when we bought this property, to start building in now to start paying the land back while that whole process is going on with FEMA. And I know it doesn't matter whether we're in the city or county to start a Clomar and the Lomar and all this language. It's pretty intensive.
So you are going to have to redirect this entire Sage Creek.
If you see that Sage Creek drainage runs at an angle, that you can see the drainage.
Right.
We actually built it, and there's a channel that lines up with our lots. And we just finished Heritage Hills 2, the first phase of that. But yeah, we have to reroute drainage.
Boy, that's gonna, I mean, that adds into the cost to your.
It does.
So, I mean, how do you make them,
It does.
and with granite tops, how do you make them affordable?
You just take a lower down, you provide a better product,
Yeah.
lower price. You build more houses, that's what you do.
So it's volume instead of,
It's exactly what it is.
because I mean, that's a lot of water.
It's a dry creek bed, it runs during the snow melt and rain, I mean, it's not an active, there's water under the ground, but it's not an active creek, it's a dry creek bed.
Other questions? Okay, thank you. Do we want to discuss this now?
I think we
Do we-
have to have a good work session.
Let's schedule this. One question for you, Mr. Lubin, while we're on this. If we did have an agreement that they would annex within 36 months, what would be the enforcement capability of the city to some agreement like that?
The only enforcement you have is really to shut the water off, but that's real difficult because now the lots are sold to individual homeowners, and it's really, you really have no remedy.
Penalizing the individual homeowner
Right.
versus the developer.
Correct.
A question along the same line, Mr. Mayor. How do we assure that these houses and streets and utilities are all built to city standards when they are not in the city yet? How do we enforce that? I'm not sure we have any mechanism to enforce it unless the county would say, okay, no, we'll make darn sure that it's done under your conditions. I'm just not sure how we do it.
You'd have a fight on your hands.
Meeting when we first started this a year ago, and the county and city both at the meeting said that would be enforced. The city would make sure the standards were made. They would have to participate in all of our.
We did that in the Salt Creek area, business development there, did we not?
Not successfully.
Not
That was the
successfully.
intent.
Right, and no one is enforcing the
It's out of our jurisdiction.
architectural
We just don't have,
standards up there.
we just don't have any jurisdictional powers.
See, that Salt Creek
Well, I think it's
deal we
probably,
did.
I mean, these folks have put a lot into this, so I think it at least deserves a good, serious discussion in work session. We've received criticism recently for making exceptions to our codes and our requirements, and we do want to maintain some consistency. So, can we get that on the agenda and let these folks know when that's scheduled? Okay.